Good morning. Good morning. It is a little overcast here in Houston. You know how it is, but we're going to make do. So today I'm starting out something new, maybe once or twice a week. I will go live on one of my pages. Hopefully you guys will be interested in interacting with me. If not, just watch. Or you can catch this later in the day and see what you missed out on. I've attempted a couple of times to set this up on Facebook, schedule lives. I understand that you have to use specific software to do it, and I'll probably look into that. I haven't really played with it that much, but today I decided I was going to edit some of my older photos to see how they hold up with the new software. Looking back on some of these, they always make me chuckle because the lenses and the cameras back then were so different. Not that they were bad, because they weren't. I mean, it was, state of the art. It was what we had at the time. But, I look at what we're able to capture today with, the mirrorless cameras that I'm shooting with currently, as well as, some of the higher end lenses, the clarity, the sharpness. And I mean, this isn't bad, but I could see where it could definitely be some improvements, Even an image like this, where, you see little red areas, but that was on the skin, so it's not really much we can do about that. So let's see, what shall I edit today? These photos were taken at my studio when it was downtown, and this was, I think, back in 2010, maybe. Yeah, I think that's about right. So I'm going to pick one of these. I'd already opened one that I was looking at that I'll probably use for Instagram or something like that. I'm a fan of these photos. It's a little overexposed. Yeah. Let's jump over to Photoshop and see which one I have opened already. So here's one that I opened before going live. And this is a good one. One of the things that has always been one of my big pet peeves is making sure that the client or the model's eyes don't sink here into their sockets. You want some white on both sides of the eyes if you can, if you can capture that. But I also take into consideration that, many people that you're going to be working with are not models. So giving them those little subtle directions are a little bit more difficult than you may think it is. But, with time, if you work with them enough, if you have enough time during that shoot, yeah, you can make it happen. So anyway, I've already straightened this image. I have not gone in to do any touch-ups. I'm not going to do a ton of them because then this video or this live would be ridiculously long. But usually what I do is I go in and I survey the image and look for, imperfections that may need to be corrected. Like I'm looking at her nails here. I'm looking at some acne on the face, a few little flyaway hairs, things like that. If there's anything on the outfit that I need to catch, I'll usually get that in post. But let's get started. So usually, like I said, first thing I do is I'm going to go in here and I'm going to create a duplicate layer of this that'll give me something to work on. So I'm going to just hit on my MacBook, Command J. That's going to give me a second copy. And then I'm going to run one of my scripts. I'm going to create a split view of this image. And what that does is it allows me to zoom in on one, and whatever I do on one image will be duplicated on the second one. So let's say, for instance, if I use this one as my reference image. And I'm going to zoom in really close on that. And this is where I'll start doing my cleanups or something like that. It will mirror it here. Now you can also make this larger, just to give you an idea. So I'm going to go ahead and grab the spot healing brush, which is one of my favorite tools to use for this type of work. I'm going to zoom in here a little bit closer on our face. I'm going to start probably around the forehead. And I'm just looking for little things, little small things, take them out. And usually the things that I take out are pimples, things that could have been, better addressed with really good makeup. But, in studio or on location, I know that everyone doesn't have access to a professional makeup artist. So that happens. Now, if you're planning a shoot and you can budget in a makeup artist, trust me, you want to go with that. And it's also very, very important to make sure that your makeup artist understands that you're going to have photos done. You're going to be doing a photo shoot, so that they don't do a lot of oily or dewy makeup, because that just becomes a reflective surface on your face. And a lot of those things are going to be really, really hard for your retoucher at the end. You're not going to be happy with the end result, because you won't look as natural if they have to go in and do a whole lot of skin adjustments based on that dewy makeup. Now, if you have a look that you're going for and you really want, shiny skin or something like that, then go for it, but the problem with it is it's going to be a little bit more difficult to fix if you, change your mind later on. So like I said, I'm just going in here and I'm just touching up some of this little small stuff, things that would annoy me a little bit, but most people probably wouldn't even notice. I don't see much on the arm. Here's a little mark. And usually I can also do, further adjustments to this kind of stuff when I get to my frequency separation. But this is just a much faster way, to knock out a whole bunch of it. I'm going to leave that hair around the fingers. Now, you see the fingernails here? Let's zoom in a little bit. I'm going to try to correct those. And here's another one where there's a hard line. I'm just trying to blend them in so that you don't notice that as much, the nails. And usually this is not something that I spend a lot of time on. I'm just, showing you guys what can be done if it's necessary. I should be using a smaller brush, but you kind of get the idea. So that's the only hand that's visible. I don't see anything major around the lip. Let's go and look at the eyes real quick. So one of the scripts that I use a lot will adjust for, you can go in and clean up these veins, removing the red veins from the eyes. But while I'm already doing the little touch up, I usually just go in and just, knock that out real quick, since I can already see it, and I just keep it on that layer. You don't have to, if you're, starting retouching, you don't have to go crazy with this. This doesn't have to be completely perfect. You just want to get rid of anything that's going to be distracting. If a person has like really large veins visible, then you want to go in and kind of soften those out. Get rid of them if you can. But this young lady had really beautiful skin, so it really wasn't a big problem. She wasn't even wearing very much makeup. She had like the bare minimum on. So because you can see around the eyes, not much makeup, no lipstick. She had like more like just something to, you know, keep the lips a little shiny. So we're going to zoom out on that. Yeah, so we look at a layer. If I turn that on and off, you'll see little changes, but you know, they're not major. So I'm going to go ahead and close one of these, and just so we can, you know, work on just that one image. So let's zoom in here and look around the fingers. So if I turn it off, see everything comes back. And clean up layer. Good, good, good. Okay. So then the next thing that I would normally do is I'm going to go into my frequency separation. I'm sorry, my frequency separation. So there's a number of different ways you can do it. You know, as you know, if you've been watching some of my other videos, you know, I have a ton of different panels that I work with. It just depends on which panel you want to use. I know a young brother I started talking to last night again is starting to use the Retouch panel. So I'm just going to use that today, so that this might be something that he can work with, and he can kind of just follow along on one of his images. So yesterday in my last video, I showed how a lot of people use this easy tab where they just, you know, basically brush over everything on the skin. But today what I'm going to do is I'm just going to do the basic frequency separation, and it's relatively simple once you get the hang of it. So in this folder that says frequency separation, if you open it, you have two layers. You have your high layer and your low. So if you turn off the high layer, you notice that everything gets really, really blurry, right? And if you were to turn off the low layer, you see how everything gets ridiculously sharp, because that's the texture layer. So what we want to work on right now is going to be our low layer, where we're going to go in here and we're going to even out the skin and just kind of blend the skin colors together, you know, just to give it some uniformity, right? So we're going to click on our high layer, and we're going to go down to our, we're going to click on this little icon here that almost looks like a half moon, and you're going to go down to black and white, and you're going to choose a black and white filter, and then you're going to bring that down where you can really start to see the difference in the skin tone. Now it's not going to look good for right now, but you'll get the idea. You can see that, you know, where the skin transitions are. So we're going to just leave that there. And then we're going to go back down to our low layer, because that's where we're going to be working at. I'm going to go ahead and turn off this high layer here, and we're just going to be working on this low layer. We'll go over to our brush, and we're going to choose our mixer brush. And you want to make sure that this icon here is selected. And if you're not sure, go ahead and do clean brush just to be sure. I have my wet set at 10. My load is 75, my mix is 90, and my flow is 100%, okay? And I am not using a Wacom tablet at the moment, nor am I using my iPad. I'm just using a MacBook Air. So as you look at these transitions in the skin tone, you can see darks and lights and things like that. So what we want to do is we want to try to blend these a little bit better together. What you don't want to do is blend a highlight into a shadow. You just want to blend the shadows, then blend the midtones, then blend the highlights with like a little circular motion, right? So let's get started. So we're just going to like blend this in right here. Come over here, blend that a little bit. So you can kind of see where the shadowed areas are. And then you see where your highlights are. So you want to blend all your highlights. And just, we're not going to spend a ton of time on this, but I just want you guys to get the idea, right? Especially if you're starting out and you're experimenting with retouching. Some of this will become so, you know, just natural to a lot of people, especially anyone that has an art background whatsoever, because, you know, you're used to working with brushes and layers and, you know, painting textures and things like that. But if you're new to this, you just think about it like you're painting and you're just mixing paint. And you're just trying to get the paint all the same colors to mix together. That's the key. So I'm just going to go in here. I'm going to zoom in a little bit. I'm going to make this brush a little bit smaller. So you want to try and keep your brush as small as the area that you're working in. And remember to release each time you go to a new area. So you're not just completely just dragging over the entire surface. Now this technique will work for almost anything, whether you're editing skin tones or if you're editing faces or whatever it is. It doesn't make a difference. It's gonna look the same. So you could be working on a car and you could still use frequency separation to clean that image up. And I'm just gonna go in here and I'm just blending the shadows. Now this doesn't have to be perfect when you first start out. After time, you will get much, much better at this. Just getting those colors to blend together as best as possible. Let's make that brush a little bit bigger for this area. And you can start to see where the blotchiness is going away, and you're just kind of blending all of that together. Now, I'll tell you, I've been learning quite a bit about frequency separation from a few others that I follow. And, these guys have it down to a science. They've been doing this for so long. And I mean, if you don't dodge and burn or you're not doing frequency separation, as a retoucher, this is almost their bread and butter, which is, going to be dodging and burning, micro dodging and burning, frequency separation, things like that, to get that look that everyone wants for their final images. Now, again, there are a ton of different filters that you can use that can kind of give you the same effect, plugins, that you can use. But if you can't afford those plugins in the beginning, this is a very good way to learn how to do this on your own. And you can use very simple actions, that you can get this done. So even if you don't have one of these panels or you can't afford one of these panels, which they're not very expensive. And if you're spending, $20 a month or more, for subscription services, like Photoshop and things like that, this is going to be a very good investment for you because it is definitely going to speed up your workflow. Trust me, it will. But I understand, we're all on our budgets. We know what our limitations are right now, especially, we're trying to recover from, 2020 and, grow forward. So trust me, guys, I know where you're coming from. And the same is with your clients. You want to make sure, whether this is for your family or you're running a photography studio or that's your goal, that you want to open a little small studio, a home studio, whatever. It's important that you learn these skills because your clients will see this type of work from others and they'll ask you, can you do this? And you should be able to, answer yes. And, practice makes perfect. So if you practice this, you will get better at it. So we're going to turn back on our texture layer. And we can start to see, again, as we're blending in here, these areas. And then we're going to turn off our black and white. And we'll see our colors kind of coming together. So let's zoom out a little bit. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to turn off all of the stuff that we've done so far. So that's what our frequency separation. This is our layer here is, where we did all of our touch-ups. So what I'm going to do is go here to our background layer. Option, click, which turns everything off. then you can option click again and it'll turn everything back on. So we want to go into the black and white, turn that off. We can actually probably just get rid of that now because we don't need it anymore. So you want to zoom in a little bit, take a closer look at your skin tones. Looks good to me, but shut it down. And if you look close, you can see how the skin transitions cleaned up just a little bit. And I mean, you can spend hours doing this. I don't recommend that. You should be able to get in here and, finish off an entire photo, in, 5 or 10 minutes and then move on to the next thing. Because if not, then, you're not being profitable because you're working on, you're creating something, an extra workflow for yourself. Now, if you have a client that needs something specifically done, like I see this earring in here, right? So I have two options. I could clone this in, or I could go in through the texture layer and, try and remove it. But it's not that big of a deal that it's there. But if it was an issue, you have a number of different tools you could go in and you could fix that with, right? So anyway, we're going to move on. Let's see what we got here. Looks pretty good. So I'm going to go ahead and move to the next thing, which I would normally do for a client is, one of the two things that they'll always ask about is, whitening the eyes if possible and whitening the teeth. Well, we don't see a lot of teeth in here, so I don't really think it's going to be necessary to go in and whiten her teeth. And her eyes actually don't look bad to me, but I'll just show you guys real quick. So if I was going to whiten her eyes, I'm going to go back to the original panel and we're going to go to eyes and we're just going to click on whiten eyes and then I'm going to close the panel and you see it's created a new folder. And what we're going to do is we're just going to make sure that we're clicked on this layer mask and the foreground color is white. We're going to have to switch our brush back to a normal brush and then make it smaller. And we're just going to paint in just a little bit. And we start to see the eyes lighten up a little bit, the white areas. Same as here. Now this is too much. So I'm going to bring that down to about 35%, which will give it a more normal look. So let's zoom out a little bit. So you don't want our eyes to be bright, like you have this white wall here. You don't want our eyes to be glowing like they're neon. So we're going to bring it down, maybe even a little bit more, maybe to about 25%. And we turn it off and on. We can see there's a slight change, but it's just enough. Okay, so that works for me. Let's see, full body. So she has, a beautiful body for her, shape and age and everything like that. I try not to do a lot of body modifications, but I do see a few things like around the back here, that could be adjusted, just so that you have that symmetry. And I also noticed the way her strap is coming over her arm. I would fix that. So in order to do that, I'm going to have to flatten these images, or either I can create a stamp layer. So let's go back. Okay, so here's this layer. So we're going to go up here to liquify. I'm going to bring that image into liquify. And we're just going to zoom in on the area where we want to correct, which is right here. And we're going to get our push tool. And we're going to look at how large the area is. And we're going to try to match the size of the brush right about the size of the area that you're going to be moving. And you just start slightly pushing it in. Now I don't want this to be completely flat because there are a lot of folds and there's a little bit of motion in her dress even though she's not moving. So you don't want it to be like a straight line, but that's close enough. So then here on the arm, I want to just push that back just a touch. And then what you could do is you could go in here and clone in this line just to bring it back if you wanted to, if you felt like it was necessary. but I don't think that's going to be, you know, that big of a deal. So everything looks good. Just a little bit more. Okay, that's good. Boom, there we go. So that's our before, after. So we zoom in real close here. Before and after. That's it. So some of you, if you wanted to, you could do some additional skin softening, and you would go back to your frequency separation, but you would have done this, you know, before you got to this stage. So on your lower level, one of the things that I do sometimes, you know, just to even out the skin and to blur it a little bit more, is that I will stay on the lower level after I've done the mixer brush, and then I'll go to my selection tool here. Which one do we want? We're going to take your lasso tool, and then you just pick certain areas, and you just lasso those areas, and then go up to filter, blur, Gaussian blur, and then you want to pick your radius. I'm doing this the hard way. See how blurry you want that to be. So I'm going to bring that to about 4.9, somewhere in there. And then you could go and pick a different area, and then just go back to filter, hit Gaussian blur. And you may not even see that much of a difference, but it's just in the skin tone that you're blurring out just a little bit more. So if you don't have to do the whole body, you just look for certain areas that you may see a little bit more blotchiness, and just, you know, hit that. Boom, there you go. Okay. She doesn't have a lot of blotchiness in her skin, but you want to also try and maintain as much skin texture as possible, even in the resolution of this image. So I don't want to, you know, her to wind up looking plasticky or something like that. And if you, by chance, wind up with an area where you've removed too much texture, the panel has a texture replacement. So on skin, you can go here to texture, and then, you know, choose your brush. What layer am I on? And then you can start painting in texture back into the skin. But I don't want to add any texture to her skin. Okay, let's close that. And that. So that's pretty much it. Now, I mean, you know, there's other things that you can do. I mean, obviously you can go in and do really cool artistic stuff, you know, to the images. But for the most part, you know, once you reach this level, if the client is happy and you're not working on something, you know, really, really crazy, then I would just stick with that. I usually will crop this for the equivalent of an 8x10, and we'll end up with something like that. So if we look at that at full screen, it's about there. And that's pretty much it, guys. So, I mean, hopefully, you know, you guys learned a little bit, you know, from this, you know, simple little walkthrough. Like I said, I want to start doing these videos more often. Now, one thing that I may do, let's see here. Go to finishing, and you can play with the contrast. You can also play with the details. So details is going to be more like sharpening. So if you click on that and you go look at your layer mask, it sharpened the image a little bit just to give it just a little touch of sharpness. See, that's where you see a lot of it right there. But that's too much. Let's close off some of these. So you don't want to go that far, obviously. You know, you want to keep it under control. So like, let's say for instance, depending on which layer that's on, you know, you would, let's go here. Let's start with this. So we're going to flatten this image. And then we're going to go back to our detail. And you can see just a little bit more texture to the skin, to the lips, the hair. You see that? Now that may be too much. So you could bring the opacity down. Or you could do it the opposite way, is that you could invert this mask and then just paint in, you know, where you want the texture to be. So it depends on, you know, your workflow and how you want things to look. Now, I like the fact that it brought back a lot of life and definition to her hair and to the dress, you know, the texture of the dress. So I'm good with that. So this would be a finished image for the most part. All right, guys, so hopefully you learned something, and you know, like I said again before, you know, these videos will be beneficial to you. So I do look forward to doing more of these in the future. If you have not joined our group, you can go over to, let's get over here. You can go over to Facebook. Let's go over to Facebook real quick. And we set up a new group. There's not many people in the group as of yet, but you know, over time it will come. So where did I put it? I load all this stuff and then I put it up and then I can't remember where it was. Okay, anyway, but I'll put a link. I will put a link to the group under the video so that you guys will be able to find it. And, you know, what I would like for you to do, you know, obviously is to, you know, join the group, you know, start, you know, posting your images or your questions or anything like that. And then, you know, other people who may be a little bit more experienced than you or myself can answer your questions, you know, steer you guys in the right direction. In the future, we'll be doing some live photo shoots that you guys will be able to ask questions during the photo shoots as well as the, you know, the post work. All right, guys. So it's been your guy, Rome. It is getting a little bit later in the day. I got some things I need to get done today. But like I said, I wanted to finish off this video. And I will catch you guys in the next video. Until then, stay safe, wash your hands, and take care of your loved ones. And if nothing else, get out and create something amazing. I will catch you guys soon.